Shogun episode 8 ended with scenes that made me realize what a sociopath Toranaga really is. I mean, how fucked up do you have to be to let your best friend and most trusted general commit suicide? I know it's all supposed to be for victory and glory, but still, is it worth it? Let's talk about episode 8, where Toranaga acted like he was sick, used the 49 days he was given to his own advantage, and fooled everyone except Hiromatsu into thinking that he was surrendering. Moreover, Hiromatsu wasn't the only person who died in this episode. Buntaro also died by Mariko's words. Our girl was brutal. We all know Buntaro is basically an abusive piece of shit, but still, he got his heart broken when he was being romantic and vulnerable. Let's discuss all of this and more. The aftermath of Nagakaro's death. Apparently, you are given a customary 49 days to mourn when your son dies in the most foolish way possible. From the start of the episode, Toranaga seemed like he was going through a lot. He appeared weak and sick, and he had this persistent cough. At first I thought he got sick due to all the travel and he was emotionally vulnerable due to his son's death, so it was only understandable his body got weaker too. But there was something about his cough that was not convincing at all. Was it because I, as a viewer, knew that Toranaga would not give up and surrender in any way? Probably. At the end of the episode, when the mourning period was over and he got out of the bed in such a quick way that I became sure he was not sick at all. His sickness was part of the ruse. He had to appear weak, defeated, helpless, and small to everyone around him, and it worked. The real plans. When in the meeting with Father Alvito, Toranaga asked him to go to Osaka and tell Ishido what he saw here, meaning how Toranaga was ready to surrender and all. I immediately thought, why would he feel the need to let his enemies know how weak he was if he was really surrendering? Unless he purposefully wanted them to think he was weak and helpless, Alvito's message would only bring more humiliation. And when Hiromatsu pointed out the same thing later to Yabushige, I knew I was right. If Toranaga was really surrendering, he wouldn't send that message with Alvito. There wouldn't be any need for it. I know you're probably wondering whether Hiromatsu was in on the whole plan from the beginning. I think this scene showed that no, he was not. He realized Toranaga's real plans right there. First, because he's smart, and second, because he knows Toranaga better than anyone. He knows how his mind works. So in the final meeting with the vassals, Hiromatsu wanted to make sure that Toranaga's plan worked successfully without any problems. He realized the other vassals were not believing in Toranaga's act, so he had to make it more believable, even if it meant killing himself. This wasn't choreographed, in my opinion. Hiromatsu decided to do what was necessary at that moment to fulfill his duty. That's why there was an understanding glance between him and Toranaga, and that's why Toranaga took it so hard. He didn't want or plan it to happen. Perhaps he thought one of his other vassals would riot and threaten him with committing seppuku, and that would help his plan, but when Hiromatsu was the one who wanted to kill himself, Toranaga was forced to accept it for his plans to work. I mean, here, big congrats to Hiromatsu, a phenomenal character. Even if he wasn't directly in on the plan, he made a correct read from Toranaga's conversation with Father Alvito and got that Toranaga was faking the defeated look. He knew Toranaga so well that he gave his own life to buy the vassals' acceptance. That's what the final look between them was all about. They knew exactly what the other needed to do without a word. Do you agree with my understanding of the events? And I also should ask, having your closest friend and ally commit seppuku to ensure your victory, doesn't that feel like going too far? I mean, is it really worth it? I guess when you think about the end game, it is, but it does also make it harder for us viewers to root for his character. Anyway, let's move on to another killer moment in the episode. Mariko and Buntaro's tea ceremony. I mean, for once, in the entire series, I thought Buntaro and Mariko were going to have a nice little moment together. But I think I underestimated, and perhaps a lot of you too, the immense hatred Mariko harbors against Buntaro. If this wasn't the final nail in the coffin of their relationship, I don't know what is. We saw Buntaro making an effort at something, a grand gesture of a tea ceremony. The guy even turned into a poet. In the end, he made what he thought was a beautiful proposal, going to death together. But it turns out, what Mariko wanted all those years wasn't really death. Perhaps she wanted that too, but what she really rooted for was a life away from Buntaro.
1000年生かされた方がましでござりまする。
Ouch. I mean, we all knew she wasn't happy with the fact that her father married her off to Buntaro and he has been physically and emotionally abusive all those years, so no one really expected Mariko to fold after all the things Buntaro had done, but still, this scene revealed that Mariko would rather live if it meant Buntaro wasn't going to be with her. It was harsh, so much so that it made a samurai cry. For the first time in the show, I felt like we were seeing the real Buntaro, his human side, and I enjoyed that scene very much. He got the final blow from his father, who refused to let him die. You will know what it is to be denied. Wow, I don't know what to say. Yabushige and John. Besides learning that Yabushige has a list of worst ways to die, we also saw him being allies with John Blackthorn. Now, I'm not entirely sure if I understand this storyline fully, so I'm gonna need your help in the comments. Let me tell you what I got from it, and you tell me if you think it's right or wrong. So, Yabushige first refused John's offer to be allies because he still believed that Toranaga would fight. Hiromatsu's death ensured that Yabushige would betray Toranaga and work with John. And Toranaga knew of this from the beginning. My guess is that Toranaga is planning on Yabushige and John getting close to Osaka without suspicion, and he sent Mariko there to give orders. From the outside, it will look like Yabushige and John are on Ishiro's side, but Mariko's presence there ensures that Toranaga still intends to use Yabushige and John and the cannons on his ship. We'll see what happens next week. Tell me how you interpreted this storyline. If you want to know what really happens to John Blackthorn and Mariko, I made videos on that. Go check the real history behind Shogun. See you next week after episode 9.